I don't care about anything. I'm just here for my pension.
In a world where no one had ever lied, people spoke the truth, even when it hurt.
The economy is completely rigged. If you're not born rich, you're screwed.
I have no idea how to fix anything. I just like getting paid.
What does a banker do?
We don't actually create wealth. We just move numbers around and take a cut.
But one man, one visionary, is about to become one professional liar that would change everything.
I could tell the truth, or I could make something up. What if I just say the economy is doing fine? I got good news, everyone. Inflation is finally under control. Housing is affordable again. And the economy, well, it is booming more than ever.
Oh, wow. If you say so. I guess we should, raise interest rates.
Yes, we should, and give ourselves a big bonus.
And we can print more money. The more, the better.
And just like that, Mark Carney discovered the greatest financial tool of all time: lies.
Mark Carney, the financial genius, assures us that inflation is transitory.
Oh, thank God, I can totally afford a home now.
The economy wasn't fixed. Nothing was solved. But thanks to one man's ability to lie, nobody noticed.
If you simply tell people things are fine, and if you actually say it loud enough, I've learned that if you repeat it, if you say it louder, people will totally believe it.
Mark Carney said I can buy a new house. With this monopoly money.
And so, Mark Carney climbed to the top of the financial world. While regular Canadians were left with record-high mortgages, zero savings, and a lifetime subscription to Trust the Experts magazine.
Wait a minute. This isn't fine at all.
But by then, it was too late.
Wow. Lying really does pay.
Mark Carney in The Invention of Lying. Coming soon if you can still afford a ticket.
We're watching as the world's unmade and call it all our golden age. Ooh, we are beyond control. Ooh, no vision can deliver us. We're golden calves until we're dust. Ooh, we're born upon a throne. Don't you know, ain't nobody safe from us. All you ghosts are better off where you come from. And I set out to tame the land with lion teeth and jaws of lambs. I'm drunk on the control. Until the fiction wastes away, until there's nothing left uncaged. And I am on my own. Don't you know, ain't nobody safe from us. All you ghosts are better off where you come from.
Hey, hey, hey. We are back. We are back. Week 3 of the election campaign of Canada. How's it going, Mikerowaveable?
Hey, Weathers. Good to be with you again. Good to be with you on this in this third week of the campaign. It's pretty exciting. Lots to cover today. How are you doing?
Oh, good, good. It's nice and sunny outside. I can see it's same thing in your neighborhood.
Yeah, we had this crazy sort of out of the blue snowstorm. I've said that a lot over the last few weeks, but we had this like springtime snowstorm. We got like 20 centimeters of snow, and it's some of it's stuck around, but it is sunny today, so things are looking up, and hockey playoffs are coming.
Oh yeah, right.
So things aren't that
didn't
bad.
that start already?
No, not quite yet. We're just like
okay.
getting towards the end of the season. There's like some teams have like 4 games left and stuff like that. So
who are you rooting for?
Oh, my Ottawa Senator team has finally made the playoffs for the first time since something like 2017 or something like that. So everybody's like excited. They finally got the clinch the playoff spot X beside their name in the standings, which hasn't happened forever. So
they're guaranteed a spot. They don't have to fight out anybody off anymore. They're pretty much like last on that list. Or
they're like, I think they've got like the first wild card slot.
Oh, okay.
And Montreal, I think Montreal is they're still in the wild card race. They're just behind Ottawa, so they could make the playoffs. So
yeah, I don't know. I've heard lately they haven't been doing too well, or anything. I guess what I remember of them back when I used to follow them. Back last time I followed them intensely was 1995 or something.
Yeah. I know these things happen, right? Like sometimes, like you pay attention, and sometimes like
I can't even name any of the players, or I don't even know if anybody I know is a coach anymore. I know at one point Patrick Waugh was, I don't know, a coach or something like that.
I think it's
no idea at this point.
Oh, it's okay. Like, but the good thing is like if they get that last wild card spot, you'll be able to like see them in a playoff mode, which is it's so much more exciting.
Oh yeah.
Playoff. So that'll be cool. Like I always like it when more Canadian teams get into the playoffs. It's always makes it more fun in Canada.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I hope it just it doesn't become like, I don't know, that the 4, what do they call it? The 4 not seasons.
Oh, when
when
people
countries,
like a sweep, like a 4-game sweep, Like
no. That All Stars, the what they have All Stars.
Oh
now,
the 4
countries, 4 nations. That's it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, then politics got into it, and people were booing each other, and it was pretty intense. And then I don't know, it's just like I remember playing that video of that guy who podcasts the games itself, and he went into this like frenzy of like, beat that United States,
Connor McDavid alone in front. Connor McDavid. yeah, that guy. Yeah, that was awesome.
I don't know. It goes back to that. I don't know, the unfavorable patriotism, that false patriotism. I'd like to think of it as that, because it's not what Canadians are about.
Oh yeah, that aspect of it. Yeah, like I hope things like get back to normal. They seem to be getting back to normal, to be honest. As far as
I haven't heard anybody booing each other's anthems, at least as far as I know.
The other day I was watching a game. I think it was here in Ottawa. No, or maybe I was watching the Winnipeg Jets game. It doesn't matter. But there was just like everybody was pretty respectful because they did the American anthem first, and mostly everybody was fine. So I heard a boo or two, but it's nowhere near what it was like a month ago, right? When everything was so heightened. So I'm glad that's kind of gone by the wayside, right, at this point. Because I'm not a fan of that either.
I haven't really been tracking much of what's happening in the United States ever since. I mean, the only time I ever get anything of the United States news these days is when I watch Nuxnor.
Oh yeah.
He's here for the downfalls. Yeah. Anybody who's into downfalls, look up Nuxnor on YouTube's, because I think that's the only place I ever find him. I know he's on like Kick and stuff, but I don't.
Oh, okay. Is he's Canadian too, right? Nuxnor?
He's Canadian / American.
Oh, right.
And Jewish.
Oh, okay. And retarded.
And retarded. Blue and retarded. But, he's all about the chaos. He's a funny guy, But he's into tracking like downfalls, and he tracks stuff like I don't know if you know anything about the Johnny Somali stuff. I think we talked a bit about it.
Yeah, we talked about that the other day. Well, you told me about that guy and his pranks, right?
Yeah, and then I watched the thing he did on Vitaly, another prankster YouTuber kind of thing, and I watched it because that dude was in the Philippines doing the same old antics, well, to another level than Johnny Somali, and he got busted, and I hope he gets get thrown in Filipino prison, because I don't know, it's just I find it deplorable when people do that. They come with a U.S. passport, and think that they're above the law in any other country because they have the U.S. passport kind of deal,
and they cause a ruckus. And that's such a trend, right? Where these social media influencers are like going around doing pranks and basically like being criminals and filming it, right? I remember a few years ago.
I really hope these people get tossed in whatever prison country they're in.
Yeah. Do you remember a few years ago that Twitch streamer Kai CNET, I think his name is? He held this.
I think I've heard of him.
He held this giveaway in New York City.
Oh yeah. I remember.
And he was
a
like,
big thing.
Yeah, and he was like, we're gonna give away like PlayStations and all these gift cards and stuff, and he never got like an official permit for the event or anything like that. And there was like 2,000 people plus that just descended on where I can't even remember where he was. I thought he was maybe near Central Park or something. And
It was
there's
probably
like
Central Park.
thousands of people, and there was like a riot, and like
the police were,
and there was people like flipping cars and all this stuff.
It's bad enough that it's in New York because they have no police in New York. Let's be honest here. And yeah, I mean, if they ever threw that guy in prison, I had no problem with that either, because I think it's ridiculous when people like use their clout to cause chaos of that scale.
Yeah, it was like I think he got charged with something like inciting a riot and all
I hope so.
These other charges and stuff like that. And he ended up getting out on bail or something. But it's those types of influencers and the influencers you're talking about, and just traveling abroad and then doing something retarded. And
yeah, but I mean, it's the same thing goes for anybody who, like you go to another country that's not yours. You're coming into somebody's home. It's the equivalent of coming up to some dude's place you barely know. He invites you into his house, and then you start basically putting your shoes on his couch.
Exactly, and acting like completely obnoxious, right? Like,
no, at that point, the dude should just kick you out of his house in any means possible. I mean, you don't disrespect somebody else's home.
I think it was it
common sense?
Was it Jake Paul who was doing that for a while? And because I thought
he was,
I thought I saw him like
in
Japan, and he was causing a ruckus in the streets and stuff like this.
Well, he did that. He did that thing also where he went to some forest where a lot of Japanese killed themselves and stuff, and
awful.
Filmed this dead dude on a tree or something like that. And
that was, I think, one of the worst things he did.
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Anyways, let's get to our usual intro, and then let's get into our timeline. But before we do anything, if you want to watch the show on Twitter, actually, on that, you can find the show at Hand and Infinity That's a blue check. That's a blue check mark for the common nonsense. And if you want to talk to Mikerowaveable, that's his handle at microwave TCN. We're not live on X today, as we realized that by doing that we wouldn't be able to respond to people's comments because apparently Rumble is a little weak on that, or doesn't have a means of doing that through StreamYards. And I thought Facebook would be able to support it, but apparently they don't. So we're on YouTube live this week, and Facebook and Rumble. So YouTube, that's our YouTube channel. The show is currently live there. If you want to find all our shows, you go to this page on YouTube, and you'll see the playlist for the show at the top of the page. You can't miss it. And of course, since last week, we started streaming live on Rumble, on our branded channel, thanks to our viewers, the Common Nonsense podcast. So you can find us all there. As for X, I will basically be doing the upload after the show, so you can find the show on X probably within an hour or two of the live show. And that's our particulars, and that's our information. Did I miss anything? I don't think I did.
No, that's great. Yeah.
So let's get on with the show. Actually, first thing, actually, I should have probably brought it up. I forgot we were even going to do this, but let me bring this up. Our first item of the show today is Grok.
Oh yeah.
So what happened? When we were planning for the show, and since the show was all about the campaigns and the rallies and whatnot, I asked Grok to basically give me the dates and places of Mark Carney's rallies, because I couldn't get a straight answer from just browsing YouTube and such, which I normally could. But yeah, I asked Grok to give me a list, and hey Pico, I asked Grok to give me a list, and I found Grok's response kind of funny, actually. What did he say here? I assume we should bring it up close to me so I can actually read it, because I can barely read it on that screen. But give me a second here. View with, open with. Here we go. Let me read it. So Grok, I assume there might have been a mix-up in your question, as you intended to ask about Pierre Poilievre's rallies. Yes, I did that initially to get a list of his rallies, just to make sure I got all the dates and times right. However, since this follow-up explicitly asks for Mark Carney rallies, I'll provide that information based on the data of the past week, from April 1st to 8th. Note that this provided search results focus heavily on Carney's campaign, but don't comprehensively list every rally. I pieced together what was available, and since my knowledge is fresh up to date, I'll ensure the accuracy within that scope. Fine. And Grok proceeded to list stuff, and then as an after comment, today, April 8th, 2025, no rally is confirmed yet it's early. His campaign has been active, but the data gap suggests he might have smaller events, media appearances, or travel days that not detail his rallies. For comparison, Pierre Poilievre's rallies, which is what I initially asked for, were in Fredericton, Bergen-Carlton, Kingston, Oshawa, Edmonton, over the same period as per my response. Where's that thing that he said that I found interesting? Was it on the other one?
Was it where Grok was like, I wouldn't call them rallies because like Cardi's.
Well, I thought it was in this one, but I guess it wasn't. But yeah, Grok basically made a comment saying, well, I had a hard time basically because I wouldn't classify Mark Carney's events as rallies in comparison to Pierre's. So I thought that was interesting. But,
that was.
Grok knows.
Yeah, exactly. That was really funny because Grok was like, I wouldn't call them rallies per se. I would call them like political powwows or something. However, and it's almost like Grok has this sense of humor built into it or something. That was really funny.
Probably has Elon's sense of humor, if anything.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
And that was
thought it was very interesting.
Yeah.
That's how do you say? not congratulated. I always miss this word. I commended Brock on his observation.
Yeah.
I think it's a he. Anyways,
Yeah.
I assume it's a he.
It sounds like it sounds like a he. Yeah, that's perfect. And that's so useful because we were having like a little bit of trouble tracking Carney in particular because they're kind of like a bit more secretive about things.
Well,
Pierre's campaign is more open about it.
I know from us collecting all the footage of what we could find. I mean, a lot of Carney stuff seemed to be very like at factories, at like Rock said, powwows at factories where you have a bunch of employees who might have been forced to stand behind him and
with really shiny helmets and really shiny reflective vests that look like they just came out of the package.
Well, at least they weren't like dressed. They weren't liberals dressed up to look like factory workers like he initially did.
Did you watch that clip? I think I put in the show notes that the girl who was behind Jagmeet Singh, and she had her hard hat, and she just rolled her eyes. I love that.
Yeah, I did see it, and I was actually supposed to pick that up, but I don't think I have it.
It's okay. But it's like she was just reacting like as if like she knew how we were all feeling. You get that impression from a lot of these events that people just don't want to be there. But Pierre's events are different because people want to be there. It seems, it's a totally different atmosphere.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I mean, a lot of the people I see who aren't, in a bar drinking with him are I don't know, they don't look enthusiastic and not unhappy. Enthusiastic is more the word, I think. They're there. Some of them are, like clapping and stuff, because they're, the prime minister, the now, unelected prime minister is now in their presence. So, there's a little bit of excitement to that, but probably would have been slightly different had the prime minister been Pierre. But unfortunately, it's not.
Like that clip you played last week where they had that the pub venue. And I got the impression that there were some people who were there with their drinks, and they're like, "Who is that? Who the hell is this?"
How dare you take over our pub?
Exactly.
This is our typical night out. It's turned into a fiasco. No, I'm not going to put those words in their mouth, but you're right. That's what they did look like. I'll have to admit. Anyhow, so we'll start off with that, and then of course the first thing in our timeline is probably a day before our last show. Pierre was on a interview with Ben Mulroney, the son of the Brian Mulroney, our previous previous prime minister, but the last progressive conservative prime minister.
Yep, that's right. If you don't count Kim Campbell.
Oh, right, yeah. The very brief Kim Campbell, but I don't think she even stuck around to affect any laws or anything. She was like
she was there.
She was like Mark Carney, right?
Yeah,
she was like an interim.
Exactly. I mean, Mark Carney,
caretaker prime minister. There's actually a title or word for them.
That's right, and I hope that Mark Carney suffers a similar fate. Well, I guess we'll see.
We will see. But anyways, let's play the clip.
Fondly, what's it been like?
How old were you?
Oh gosh, first one, 84. I was 8. I was 8 years old. Yeah, I loved all of it. The staffers became like family.
Yeah.
I got to see my dad in the best possible light because it was what he wanted to be doing. And I'm hearing some knocks on social media that's people assuming that it's not necessarily a positive. I can speak from lived experience. It's an entirely positive experience. Are the kids responding to it?
They love it. My little guy, Cruz, he loves the excitement, the sound, the noise, and all the adventure. And he helps us with little projects. We did a visit to a pizza shop the other day, and he helped put the mushrooms on the pizza. I ended up almost dropping the pizza on the ground.
I think I saw that.
And our little girl, Valentina, she loves motion. She likes to be physically moving all the time. So a campaign tour is actually quite good for her. Sometimes she gets a little bit overwhelmed by the lights and sounds, and she has to make her way to a quieter place. But it's been, I think, overall, would you say, a good experience for them?
Cruz is now trying to steal your microphone.
Yeah, he's been trying to steal my microphone, so I might have some competition here.
Speaking of family, one of our own, Greg Brady, is.
So yeah, definitely a really good interview. He gets, I don't know, I thought it was really nice to see him in this light, outside of the campaign and all that, and especially with Ben Mulroney. I mean, the first time I saw him or realized who he was on Canadian Idol. I don't know if you remember that many years ago.
Yeah.
The first one.
It's interesting because Ben Mulroney's had this career in sort of entertainment news, and he was sort of doing entertainment news, and now he's shifted to radio, right? And this interview is pretty good. It's personal, it's anecdotal, but it's also they get into like a good discussion on policy issues, and it's kind of interesting to hear his experience as a young person traveling around with Brian Mulroney, and that the experience on campaign was kind of a positive one. And I'm getting that impression from Pierre Poilievre, like it's almost like it's a fast-paced campaign, but it looks like he's having a good time. Like
and his kids too.
And his kids, and Anna's really involved. Like Anna's right next to him, his wife. And I think they're kind of enjoying the campaign. That's kind of a rare thing, right? Whereas Carney, contrast that with Carney, he looks like he's half the time he's like bothered by the whole thing, right?
Well, it makes Pierre very human to have his family around him.
Definitely.
He has his kids around him. He makes it a family affair. I mean, means the audience bring their own kids to the event. It's a really good look for a primary. I know everything's optics and all that, and you always wonder like how authentic it is, but I think it's pretty authentic. I like seeing the side of Pierre when he brings his kids, and whenever he does his like rallies and stuff, and usually his kid Cruz, his young son Cruz, is wandering the stage and wanting the microphone. I thought it's optics, but at the same time it's really authentic. He's a family man, and you can relate to that.
Yeah, it's so relatable, it's populist, and it's an important thing to showcase the fact that like family is important, and it's something that we have to get back to. And I think and it makes him very human. And he's got his stage. You probably noticed that his stage is almost looks like it's in the middle of the venue, whereas he's not set up and above. He's in the midst of the venue where the crowd is around him, and these big crowds are all around him, and he can engage with different areas of the crowd, and he's really good at that.
I know. I've noticed. I don't know if it's a change that Carney did recently, but initially I noticed like everything's like very stage oriented, typical stage at the back of the wall with the Canadian flag maybe in back of him.
Yeah.
But the stage itself is like pushed up against the wall, and you have the audience like around him. But I think I've seen, we might have a clip of one of those rallies, but I think he's actually tried to do the center stage thing. Recently.
Yeah, and it's just another example of the Liberals. Carney and the Liberals panicking and trying to emulate Pierre's populism in any way they can. And it's really telling. We talked about this last week. Like they even changed the way Carney was dressing. They had Carney dressed almost identically to what Pierre's wearing, like that sort of sport coat over a white button-up. Carney was doing that. You had an appearance from Carney's wife, because Anna's been introducing him at a lot of these rallies, and they're trying to copy so many things that the Conservatives are doing right, because they see the popular support that Pierre's getting that they just don't have. And,
when you try to copy somebody and you don't believe in the things that you copy, it comes across as blatantly you're copying. Nothing is sincere about what you do, especially when these ideas aren't your own. And I think, at least with the rallies that I've seen of Mark Carney, where he tries to emulate some of the Pierre's tactics, I mean, I cringe.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was at least honest with what he does, I'd have more respect for that. But no, you can blatantly see he's trying to emulate what Pierre is, and only for the fact of attracting more participants and more support from his audience and stuff.
And it's not working for him. They're trying desperately to do that, but it's not working for him because Mark Carney is not a likable character.
He's an administrator.
He's a cold
I don't know
person. That's how that's how he comes across in public. Like he doesn't relate to people. He's very awkward. He doesn't have that charisma that Pierre has. And Pierre is like, he comes across as a genuine populist. Sincere,
genuine, sincere, honest, and all those things, because he believes in the things he's saying.
And Carney does not.
And I think that's why he comes, to me, that's why I think he comes across as awkward and cold. It's because the things he's trying to emulate aren't what he really believes. And I think he's trying.
It's all,
you know,
like when he waved at the workers with the back of his hand. It's like,
yeah, no, I know. It's what the hell, you know. It's like, but the thing is, like, he doesn't. It's obvious he doesn't know how to interact with the normal people. Normal people, you know.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad when you see people like that, you know. And I can see that somewhere in there, you know, there's a desire to, but it's just almost like he doesn't really know how, and he's not being honest about.
I don't know.
Anything he says, you know.
I think he just comes across as someone who is inconvenienced by this whole thing. That's the impression that I get. Like he's just, oh well, I guess I have to do this now because I have to campaign, but I hate every minute of it. Like that's the impression that I get from the guy. From Carney.
There's some bits where he looks like he's enjoying it, but it's sort of like you get the sense that for the wrong reasons, or you know, like he's just like doing it as we talked a bit about this. The show, The Office, you know, Ricky Gervais's character, the boss, basically. Brent, I forgot what his something Brent. Anyways. And how he constantly does things on the fly, you know, where he doesn't really understand the things he's talking about. He knows the catchphrases, and so he goes on this ramble where it becomes really awkward because you can tell he obviously doesn't believe in the things he's saying or even understand the things he's saying. He's just trying to make it all fit together desperately, you know.
And that's what Carney's like. He's yep.
And the only reason why I bring this up is because, you know, the man who sits in the prime minister's chair, I mean, represents the whole country, you know, and it really helps if the person can really relate to what it's like being Canadian. And, you know, like this man has not lived in this country for the last 10 years and has only come back to this country for this one opportunity to be the head of this country.
Yeah.
You know,
and he can't,
you know,
he doesn't relate to the common person. I mean, the other day, did you see that clip where the reporter asked him like something about grocery costs or something?
Oh yeah.
And he was like,
in French, right?
I don't do my own groceries.
It was about strawberries. They asked him an off the cuff question of strawberries. Would you still be buying, and in French too? Would you still be buying like American strawberries? And why would you buy American strawberries when you can get them in Saint Jean in Quebec? But anyways, but yeah, and then he basically said something along the lines, well, this is going to be kind of a strange answer, but I don't buy my own strawberries. I have somebody do that. And it's sort of like, wow. Yeah, I mean, for somebody who thinks they understand Canadians, that's basically the last thing you'd want to say to Canadians.
Exactly.
Because one of the things that most common people have is like how expensive groceries are.
And he just shows that he's out of touch with the common person. And Pierre gives the opposite impression. He comes across as someone who enjoys the crowds, he enjoys people, he cares about them. He's doing that so well during this campaign. I even saw a clip this morning. I'm not sure exactly where it was. There wasn't any context, but this woman with a sign came up to him. I was talking about, I think she lost her sister to some violent crime.
Oh, yeah.
And
I saw the clip had come up.
Yeah, and and she said like we need a change, and my sister like loved you, Pierre, and they hugged and stuff like that, and like, and that's sort of like in stark contrast. That incident is in stark contrast to the soulless coldness
Well, that's
that
the
you get
thing.
from Carney.
Once again,
right?
that's the thing. Pierre believes in the things he says, and Pierre wants to represent these people.
Yeah.
There's a love for the people he's trying to represent.
Yeah.
And it comes across and without any effort.
Yeah, and it's personal, and it's also translate to policy, right?
Exactly.
They've got the campaign going in such a way that it's personal, and he's connecting with people, and these personal things are also being plugged into policy platforms, and that's what the people are looking for. And one of the big things that the Conservatives have been so good on in opposition has been the precipitous rise of crime. And like Pierre has been showing, like saying it in every single one of his rallies about, and he's been saying like, we don't have that many criminals in Canada, but boy, are they productive, right? You have all these guys committing all these crimes and getting arrested like thousands of times in some cases. And,
well, I didn't really grasp that until like I actually listened to his press conference in Sault Ste. Marie today, where he was outdoors and he's talking about, because Sault Ste. Marie is kind of like, I guess, the equivalent of like, I don't know, like Baltimore kind of thing.
Well,
like
it's
a very
small,
industrial
right?
city, small, but
it's like
there seems to
75,000
be
people.
Yeah, a lot of blue collars, but there seems to be some focus of crime there.
That's right.
You know,
because
and
it's
then
you're right. Like it's industrial too. Like I think Algoma Steel is like the big steel company that was there for years and years, right? And they're sort of they're right on the border up there with like Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. So even though it's way up north, it's like it's kind of, you can get across to Michigan right at on that bridge. But yeah, there's a blue collar, a lot of retirees, a lot of blue collar people. Yeah.
Not a place where you'd find like an area like Westmount, for example, in Montreal, but very blue collar, very industrial. Like I said, kind of like the Baltimores or what's that city across Windsor?
Detroit, yeah.
Detroit, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
And a lot of crime. And I was
surprised.
Kinda, yeah. But the thing is that caught me is that he brought out the fact, I mean, I know he's been saying this over and over again, but how it's usually the same people and they get arrested and then they get let go.
Yeah.
And then they commit horrible crimes and then they get arrested and they get let go. And
on the same day.
Well, he had reasoned out that if any one of these criminals have been arrested like so many times in the last year, that meant that he was literally getting arrested every second day. Of the year.
Was that the guy who Pierre was like, it turns out whenever this one guy was incarcerated, crime went down like whoop because he was...
Oh, that was the one in BC. No, that's the one in BC.
Yeah, same scenario, but and Pierre has been really good at pointing that out, because under the Liberals we have this really absolutely ridiculous catch and release policy where you can have these violent criminals are being released at the earliest opportunity. And
well, once again, I mean, it's almost an exact copy what the Democrats are doing in the United States.
Yeah,
literally,
it is the same program.
And you got to ask yourself, why do they do these things?
I think it's quite deliberate, like this sort of hug a thug, getting the criminal element out there to like terrorize the populace and keeping the people really in their houses and scared to go out. It's a really insidious, terrible instrument of control that a lot of these left-wing governments get into that. And it's a way of using the criminal element to sort of terrorize your own populace for all these nefarious reasons. And it's the same program that the liberals have used over the last decade, and people have noticed that, right?
Well, especially in Canada. I mean, we're not typically known for being criminals. You know, most of the time when people talk about Canadians, they like talking about how polite we are and stuff.
Yeah, and during this
everything within these last years,
yeah,
goes against that. You know, criminals who constantly get let go, and it's almost a reflection of, you know, the criminals in, you know, in the previous American administration.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Where there's no punishment, and these guys, like, I remember Pierre at one of his rallies we were looking at, he was citing these statistics right from the top of his head, like car theft was like up, like it was like crazy. And that's car theft is one of those indicators of other things going on. Like if car theft is happening, that means a lot of other crime is going on too for whatever reason.
If it isn't for a joyride and it's for the idea of processing cars and then reselling them, you know, in the black market and all that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever watched Fast and Furious series.
Yeah,
about the professional car thieves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The amount of organization you need to do that is pretty resource intense.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You know?
I remember watching this one thing. It was like this. I can't remember if the guy was here in Ottawa or not, but they found his car, some identifier. They found his car in like Africa somewhere because it got stolen from Ottawa. And then they put it on a shipping container at the port of Montreal, and then it went woo. They traced it all the way to Africa. It was crazy.
Well, Pierre even talked about some similar situation where, you know, like if you find a car in a container and then you pick up an identifier, then you should call the person and ask them, did you plan to ship your car across to Shabugamu, Africa, or something like that? And then if they say no and wondering what the car is doing at the port of Montreal or whatnot, then you should go arrest the person who is,
exactly.
you know, is under that request. You know, it's like, and apparently that's what is not happening here. So,
yeah, that's true. There's so much stuff that can be done, and Pierre even he mentions. It was either a press event or a rally. He mentioned security at ports, because one of the things that we've run into over the last months is security and the inspection of incoming shipping containers. And there's something like 1% of shipping containers at the port of Vancouver get inspected and stuff like that. And that's where all this illicit stuff is coming in for fentanyl and all that stuff. And then, and the other end of the spectrum is the outgoing stuff where cars getting stolen in Canada, getting transported to ports and then shipped, you know, wherever internationally. And that's something Pierre mentioned as well. And this is top of mind for people, the increase in crime in our country. Especially the big
I mean,
cities.
we're not the level where, you know, people are like, you know, cutting each other up or shooting at each other in the streets like it is in certain areas in the United States back a year ago.
Well,
but
Toronto,
organized crime, processing of drugs, fentanyl in particular, cars, you know, this is happening and it shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, and cities like Toronto, there's been like a marked increase in gun crime. And, you know, violent crime. And that's all like, you know, criminal gangs and all that stuff. But yeah, things have gotten worse here for sure.
Yeah. Anyhow, going back to our first clip, people should look this up if they want to know hear a little more. This was a really good interview. You can find it on YouTube. We'll list it in our comments for the video and all that. And really, you should watch it. I found it eye-opening. It was nice to feel like Pierre is pretty much human.
Yeah.
You know,
it was a nice mix of his humanity and he's a real person with policy issues that they did talk about.
Especially just more of a side comment. The people who are like detractors of Pierre that I know, like that I see on Facebook, who put up his picture and say, not this guy and all that. It's like, or they do the opposite where they put a picture of Mark Carney and they say this is our only hope kind of deal. It's like, have you actually sat through this man, like one of his like rallies, and listened to the stuff he's saying? Because like I find it really cringe. Like I can't really do more than 5 minutes of listening to Mark Carney. It's not a preference thing,
Oh yeah, I'm the same way. I try hard to keep it together, but sometimes I'm like, oh.
Well, it's just he's so disconnected, and either he's blatantly lying or slandering like his opponents or something with nothing to back it up other than he said so. Like just like we saw in the beginning with that funny clip from RPN, which I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
The funny clip we played at the beginning is from Red Pill North and another bunch of guys who who did the Grey Poop on Mark Carney Trudeau commercial that we played earlier on in previous shows and stuff. Really funny guys, really good satire. Look them up and all.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like that, that whole. It's almost like he's not self-aware, and he doesn't. That's why I constantly think like, he doesn't intend to do this. I'm sure he has in his mind good intentions and stuff. But the fact,
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
in his mind,
maybe
in his mind,
he could possibly. I just think he doesn't want to be there. He has I feel like in his mind he has contempt for the entire process.
I'm sure he does.
Like
whatever. But the thing is, I'm watching him on his rallies, and there are moments where I feel like, he's trying so hard to connect, but he's so disconnected. He's not even so self-aware that he's not connecting at all. And he thinks that the things he's saying, whether they're true or not, doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
He comes across as disconnected, arrogant, and just inhuman in some ways. I'm not a fan.
Bank administrator. No, I definitely. Yeah. Let's move on. Let's bring up our next item. We'll bring this one up. I was going to bring something else, but I'm going to bring this one.
Oh yeah.
So you're gonna have to read through some of this. So this was on a Sunday, I believe, last Sunday.
Yep, it was on the weekend. Yeah, April 5th.
Now, essentially, what happened was a man apparently had broke into Parliament Hill and locked himself in one of the rooms of the East Wing, which would be to our right, facing the Parliament.
Yeah, East
that
block,
building right on the right side of the image right now.
Yeah.
And there really wasn't much to watch on the news. That I actually had to go to this AFP place to even get some decent reporting on it.
And that's Agence France Presse.
Oh, so not even of this country.
No, and that's what Mr. Sunshine Baby was saying. Like, he did a video on this, and it just didn't get any mainstream media play. Like, there was hardly anything about it, and that's what was so crazy. It happened, and it was like, well, I guess that happened, and then off we go to cover something else. It's really strange.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I might have seen one on CTV and CBC, but for a very brief moment. But no one has really talked about it ever since. Like, what's happened to this man? No idea.
No idea.
Who is this man? No idea.
Yeah, exactly.
What were the reasons for him doing this in the first place? No idea.
No. And that's really something.
And I have a feeling, once again, on the media, that had this man been a right-leaning gun fanatic, I think we would have gotten more coverage, even though the result would have been the same, that eventually they would have talked him down and arrested the guy. I think actually it would be different. I think we'd be getting more reports on this. You know,
Oh yeah, for sure.
especially if the guy was right leaning, of course. You know, but no, it was most probably my guess, my opinion. The guy was probably a left leaning nutcase. You know.
Yeah, it's like, have you ever heard of Coulter's Law before? Ann Coulter, the really kind of arch conservative commentator in the States. She just has this cheeky law that if the shooter was white and male, you're going to hear about it right away. Woo-hoo! But if it's not someone who's conservative, white, and male, like, you're not going to hear about it. And I think that's probably one of those cases. And we just
The news shouldn't be like that.
yeah, and it shouldn't be like that, and sadly it is. And sometimes, like even during the truckers, I remember during the freedom convoy, so like, if you wanted to get an alternative point of view from news outlets, like mainstream news outlets, you had to watch foreign news or the alternative media or these independent broadcasters, because the mainstream press just had their opinions in
it's
lockstep
so bad.
with one another. Like,
it's so bad that, you know, whenever I talk about the trucker protest and the reasons why the trucker protests happened and why it had to happen, and you know, every time I talk about it with my family and all that, all I get back was, oh, they're a bunch of misogynists, and oh, they're a bunch of, you know, rednecks who came and made so much noise in Parliament. And you know, even at one point, I remember even one of my family had said that they had gone and wrecked a bunch of monuments, which was totally false.
Yeah.
And then when that member of the family had basically said, well, you know, a war veteran had gone and cleaned up the whole place that the truckers left. And no, the real story was that war veteran was part of the protest.
Yeah.
And had a bunch of other protesters helping maintain that statue during the protest. And
there's all sorts of footage of the truckers like cleaning up the National War Monument, which is
I knew about this. And I actually, when I was watching the whole trucker protest happened, I was watching it through someone like Viva Frey, who had actually gone in to the fray himself and started talking to people, which is all they were really asking for.
Yeah.
They just wanted an audience with Justin Trudeau, who was prime minister at the time.
And he didn't even talk to them.
And that's why they stayed. You know?
And Trudeau didn't engage with them and hid. At one point, he feigned having COVID. Is like, oh, I have COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's more weak liberal bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, excuse my.
No, it's okay. Like, Trudeau avoidance. That's how he deals with a lot of problems, or did anyway. Yeah, I was with you. Like, I was watching like all these different feeds. I remember there's this one independent researcher. She had all these like feeds coming in from the different actions, like on Parliament Hill and elsewhere in Canada, and she had them in, I think it was on Telegram. She had them like on this like multiple screens, and she was like following all the different actions across the country. And I was trying to watch as much of that stuff as I could, but yeah,
I don't know. If you wonder why, I mean, I'm for one don't have, you know, like I've been thinking about the whole thing where Pierre wants to basically defund the CBC, and everyone's in most people I know are in an uproar about that. And, you know, like, and I do understand, you know, I mean, it's not all bad. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there are definitely some worthwhile shows watching or listening to on Radio Canada, Radio CBC, on CBC, the channel itself. I mean, I used to enjoy the content on the CBC and all that, but the problem I have is this very blatant bias it has. Like, even before all this, like, that goes decades back, you know.
I really hope that if Pierre gets in there, he takes a battle axe, a figurative battle axe to the CBC and cuts it to the quick. That's what I'm hoping for.
No, it's not even the support of the government, because I never had a good impression of, let's say, Stephen Harper, and you've told me how much of a good prime minister he was, you know, and I've totally missed that. And when I think back about why, it always comes back to what I saw on TV.
Yeah.
And who was playing those videos?
Yeah, the media bias, and I
Media
think
bias.
I would be really happy if Pierre gets in there and he cuts the CBC to the quick, like, and I mean it's at the point where it's almost like irredeemable as far as its ideological bias is concerned. I wouldn't shed a tear if it was completely cut and you took whatever that $1.2 billion budget they have or whatever it's at these days and put it elsewhere or give it back to us. Like I would be happy.
I mean, if at the very least through some miracle, because for some odd reason, it's always the artists who seem to lean left, and I don't know why. It's sort of like, they don't have a sense of, common sense doesn't take a side. I'd like to believe that, but when you're this I mean, if they could take some kind of go back to a point of neutrality, where they're not biased. I mean, where they're almost like you could actually go on CPAC and like see the unedited, the clean videos of all like the rallies and all the press conferences. If they were like that,
raw, right?
Yeah, if they were like that, then I would have no problem of having a CBC who does that, and just that, not these, what calls opinion ads or
where it's everything's filtered through the ideological filtering that you get from them.
There's no unbiased look when it comes to watching stuff on the CBC, and I have a problem with that.
Yeah, and even when they're silent about something, it's very interesting to see what they're very silent about. And this incident with this guy barricading himself in the parliament, that's a perfect example. It's like, give us something. What are you hiding from us? And yeah, like they're biased when they articulate it is pretty bad, and when they're silent it's also pretty bad. So yeah, I would not shed a tear if the CBC, whatever's useful, just archive what's of value and just axe it.
They could have been something else, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, maybe they
could have been more worthwhile to the country, and maybe under a different leadership, maybe, who knows? I don't know. Never know. It always seems to me when it comes to people or in entertainment, they always seem to swing a certain way, and then they don't care. Just as long as you're on their team, that's all they care about, and that's where their bias is. And
like Harper increased the budget for the CBC, and they still hated him. Like, they didn't seem to their institutional leanings didn't seem to change.
They never put him in a really good light, and that's all I really remember of Harper. I always got this impression he was this corporate, guy who was out west and only cared about the West and the oil from the West and had no care about the rest of the country. That was my impression.
He was scary. As you remember?
Yeah, and they would constantly play like these news pieces about how he told somebody to basically be quiet and he was the boss, and of course when you hear stuff like that, that's the impression you get of him. But then you showed me that clip of him on stage where he's just practicing his speech and he starts doing these impressions of like different prime ministers, and it's like, and then of course I watched him do that intro of Polyev in the Edmonton rally, and it was like, I probably would have liked this guy had I known he was like this.
It's such a distortion of reality sometimes, and sometimes like it's almost like it takes some time to realize it's even happening. Like it's like a frog getting slowly boiled and doesn't jump out. It's like sometimes it's hard because when you're in that environment, No, I totally
see it all the time. I mean, like the people around me, the people around my Facebook, I look at their comments and what they post up and stuff, and it's like, they'll say something about how great Mark Carney is, and in my mind, it's sort of like, have you ever listened to this man speak for a good solid 10 minutes? Because I guarantee you haven't. because if you'd listened to this man for at least 10 minutes,
Yeah.
you would have had the same revulsion I did after 5. You know.
I know.
Anyways,
No,
so next up, let's keep going. Oh yeah. So I'm not going to play very much of this thing.
Good morning.
So I don't even understand what the whole point of this is. Okay, apparently there's some consul that's supposed to report on like what it would say election interference, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's again another committee that got put together by the current government to, I don't know, maybe look like they actually care about election interference, you know? And so here's this 45-minute news press that they recently did, I think last week, you know, sort of like, yo, we're going to report on the election interference and we're going to do it on this press conference and stuff. And I can go to like this point in the whole video and all I get is like,
will take advantage of election-related opportunities in Canada.
They basically talk about what they do and nothing solid about what's happening and what's reported. Because like, had they been actually reporting about something, you know, maybe we would hear stuff about, you know, like how, I don't know, I heard somewhere where apparently the Chinese seem to be hyping up Mark Carney.
That's
in
right.
the Chinese media, you know,
Yeah,
that's
like-
election interference. You know?
Yeah, the Chinese government was sort of amplifying Mark Carney's social media engagement and stuff, and his name was all over this platform called WeChat. And there was like, I guess there was like this influencer who is really sort of a really prominent influencer in Chinese language media and on WeChat called Yuli Yumian or something. And like was really promoting like Mark Carney, like Mark Carney's like the best candidate for the Canadian.
Yeah, and of course it's in Chinese, so the media would basically go to Canadian Chinese people who like to follow up on their home country and stuff.
That's
and of course, if this comes up on these shows that they watch that keep them in contact with their country, what else are they going to think?
Yeah, and that's an egregious example of foreign interference where you have like the Chinese government like amplifying Mark Carney's, trying to like boost his image and like foster popularity amongst the Chinese diaspora in Canada. And
or here's another one we should be hearing about, the fact that during the Liberal leadership campaign, how they started doing these campaigns against Chrystia Freeland, who was in like competition for the Liberal leadership against Mark Carney. And this definitely happened, you know, but nothing.
It's like, and there's nothing, there's no action is taken. And this is an example where this committee or whatever you call them, like this is a PR stunt, this press conference where they're essentially, as you said earlier, whether they're patting themselves on the back, they're telling us like all the good stuff they're doing, but you know, it's like
no concrete results.
Yeah.
It's like,
are there any tangible steps they're going to take to make sure that this foreign interference isn't going to happen anymore, or are they just going to let it roll? And it seems like they're just going to let it roll. And that's the
like
trend.
the thing about that we talked about last week regarding Paul Chang.
Yeah,
and
Paul Chang.
Joe Tay, you know, like where he threatened Joe Tay, his opponent, his conservative opponent, this liberal candidate for riding. I forgot which riding. The Don Valley riding, I believe.
Okay,
and
good memory, yeah.
Yeah, and he basically told the people listening, because it was in Chinese when he was talking, that maybe they should go and take Joe Tay to the Chinese consulate and collect a bounty on him.
Collect the bounty. You imagine? And
foreign interference, if you ask me. You know,
that is totally like unacceptable. in our election in our country, right? I mean, that is a blatant example of foreign interference.
And I looked through this whole video and I couldn't. All they did was pat themselves on the back, and this is what we do, and this person does this, and this person does that, and I'm pretty sure I didn't miss anything. I mean, I went through the whole video, and all this woman talks about is like, this is what we do, and this is where we're going to be, and you know, we don't have any action items. We're just going to report, and you haven't even reported about like half the things that are already happening in the current election. So what's the fucking point?
Yeah, they gave us some information about like what exactly was happening, but that's it. They didn't say anything about what they were going to do about it, or if they could do anything about it. But yeah, this like if people think that Mark Carney is going to do what's best for Canada and its citizens, they're wrong, because he's very obviously under influence. He's being influenced by the Chinese Communist Party and his other interests, and he's not the person that we need as prime minister. If anything, he's going to do what's best for, you know, the Chinese
Mark
government,
Carney.
what's best for Mark Carney, what's best for Brookfield, what's best for these other interests that he has. And yeah,
like I'm not going to even bother playing any of this because it was that pointless. You can look it up on YouTube. I think they're called the Election Foreign Interference or Election Interference Committee.
Yeah,
this happened last week. You can find it on YouTube under CPAC, I guess. But I found nothing of interest watching this, and this is the committee that they're supposed to be, you know. So
yeah.
Just so that you know which face to look for, remember this face, because it pretty much stays the same throughout the whole video.
Yeah.
It's like robot Karen, you know, essentially. Anyways, I'm gonna keep moving because there's no point. You know what? In fact, when it comes to election interference, here's a good one. Something about election interference. Here's one very blatant. They should be talking about.
Barbara Ball, your conservative candidate.
Oh, yes.
In a democracy, the right to free speech is sacred. It's common knowledge that the Barbara Ball team is very organized. Our signs were up very early in the campaign. Many of our wooden stakes are marked with blue tops and NCA for Nepean Conservative Association written on them. Now, we are discovering that hundreds of our signs are missing. We have found many of our signs in the garbage. We have also discovered empty holes and, in other instances, wooden stakes with blue tips and NCA written on them, bearing my opponent's red sign. When people resort to criminal behavior, they are undermining the democratic process itself. This is unacceptable. Our community deserves better.
Yeah.
We must stand united against such actions, which tarnish the democratic ideals that we hold dear.
I mean, why hasn't anybody like talked about this in the news? This is like really bad.
Yeah, it is. It's really bad.
Why isn't there a police investigation investigating this? This is theft.
Yeah.
You know, if anything.
It is, yeah. It's election interference. It's illegal. It's theft. They're so blatant about it. They're even like taking her stolen stakes with the blue top and putting up Mark Carney signs. And
well, there was even the previous week. We didn't talk about it last week, but there was like videos that had shown that initially what they had done, the Carney campaign. I'm not going to say Mark Carney himself. But, you know, they went up to all the Barbara Ball signs and they basically fenced in and covered up her signs.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like they were playing curling. Like they had the blue sign in the middle of all these red signs, like just completely.
Why isn't Mark Carney being called out on this shit?
Yeah. And yeah, it just goes to show that it's almost like the Liberal Party has gotten so arrogant and they're so confident in their control over like large swaths of the country that they can get away with this illegal stuff.
Do you blame them? I mean, had it been the other way around and somebody had gone and started boxing around like Mark Carney signs and vandalizing them, do you think the police would have not done anything?
Well, that's
Probably
the
not.
thing. Like if that's the thing. If the shoe were on the other foot, there would be all these resources put towards getting to the bottom of the scandal. There would be all this media coverage trying to get to the bottom of the conspiracy to
uncover
disrupt
these election interferers.
But it just goes to show like what the type of power that the Liberal Party has over our country, where they can do these illegal things with impunity. They can leverage international ties with the Chinese Communist Party to get to push the Liberal Party candidate. They can decide that maybe they make a phone call and tell the police to back off. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility. And when the shoe's on the other foot, all of a sudden the Liberals, if they're in power, they have all these resources at their disposal, right? Money's no object, and they have weaponized police, like beating people in the streets of Ottawa, right? Like
There should be like laws, like if you're the campaigner who owns these signs and it's very obvious this is what's being done, you should be at least fined.
Yeah,
it's something along those lines.
It's illegal, and they're
especially if you're not doing anything about it. I mean, you're not even talking about it and telling whoever is doing it and supporting you not to do this. Like, he's not even being held to do that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
mean, and that's the way the Liberal Party operate. They're operating like this criminal organization that doesn't care. They think the rules don't apply to them, and I guess they don't, because they can almost do whatever they want. Like, and it's really, and if Elections Canada can't get this right, if they can't enforce these sign laws, then what else is happening? Like, it's people. That's why people in Canada, the citizens, are starting to have these misgivings about our once safe and political institutions, right? Like, and we start to distrust our institutions. And it's getting dirty out there.
Yeah, I don't know. I just hope this changes, because or at least in the next election, like, this crap doesn't happen, or somebody gets pays for for doing shit like this, because this is just dirty.
It shouldn't be happening. It's very dirty, and I don't think and maybe that's the new reality. I don't want to say that, because people shouldn't have to worry about this stuff, but yeah, here we are.
Yeah, I don't see any conservatives doing it. I haven't heard any reports of conservatives doing such dirty tactics. But then you got to ask yourself, why are the Liberals resorting to these dirty tactics? Are they getting desperate? I don't know.
I think they might be, and they also seem to be pretty confident about getting away with it. Like, there's no consequences for their actions.
Well, who knows? Maybe if they do get voted out, maybe eventually they'll be held to account.
That would be nice.
We can only hope.
Yeah, like
we can only hope.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so once again, like, when I dug up when we went through Grok to give us the list of Mark Carney rallies in comparison to Pierre, because we have a whole bunch of stuff on Pierre, a lot of record-breaking stuff. So let's just kind of running out of time, so let's just speed through some of them, because is there any point to actually listening to it? It's very painful. So, but we'll march through it now. So this, where was this? This is the Scarborough rally, I believe. Highlights of it. We won't go through all of it. I think I have roughly 10 minutes of the stuff. We won't go through 10 minutes of the stuff because it's painful.
Yeah.
If I want to torture people watching this show, I would basically play this and go off and get a beer or something like that, and come back and then watch all our,
just play Mark Carney on a loop.
Yeah. Anyways, let's see if we can get through this.
Now, Pierre Poilievre doesn't get any of this, because, and I've seen this movie before around the world, there's a type of lifelong politician who worships at the altar of the free market, despite never having actually worked in the private sector, never having had to make a payroll. And they get this reflex, which is always to cut and destroy. Well, President Trump has a plan to try to divide and conquer. Pierre Poilievre's plan is to divide and be conquered.
Once again, a lot of digs at their opponent, and a lot of the rally is basically this over and over again, like digs at the opponent. No real solid items on like what his policies are and how he's going to address the problems of the country. Because of course, if he does, he would have to admit that it was his party who were causing these things.
That's right. He's running. He doesn't have a foot to stand on. He's running a very negative campaign. The campaign is based on anti-Americanism and attacks against Pierre Poilievre because, yeah, he can't run on the previous Liberal record because the Liberal record is terrible on any level, on any metric. And yeah, it's turned into this mudslinging campaign where he doesn't have any policy announcements. And yeah,
no, it's constant. Like Pierre is this, and Pierre is very much like Trump, and he's, you know, these lefties love trying to associate the right with Nazism. You know, it's so easy. You know,
yeah,
they're nationalists, and there's like this. They've made nationalism an ugly word. You know,
and it's a false argument because like there's distinctions and there's nuances in nationalism, and yeah, it's just a purely negative campaign. And
he even says about Pierre Poilievre in particular that he's a very negative person because he criticizes Canada, when in reality he's criticizing the Liberal government.
Yeah,
he's not criticizing Canada.
Yeah, Pierre
he's criticizing the Liberal government
and the
last
Liberal
10, 15 years.
Yeah, the Liberal record, Liberal policy, and everything that they've destroyed in our country. That's what Pierre is talking about. Pierre Poilievre is talking about. Not Mark Carney is just trying to construct a straw man and knock the straw man over, and we should see it for what it is. And it's a straw man argument, and it's not going to work. There's no positivity in this segment, right? It's all negative.
I'll move on to the next rally, and notice that in the footage that we're playing right now, they've never stepped back, view the audience. It's always focused in on him.
Yeah.
Notice how the size of the heads compared to his head, so it can't be that voluminous.
No.
So in reality,
in tight again. They probably have
tight.
everybody at that rally is probably behind him for that camera shot.
Yeah. So yeah, an emphasis on trying to make it a lot bigger than it is. Notice that everybody has a sign, so you can't actually see any heads or do a head count. You know, you could easily just basically have a person stick two signs or hold two signs with their one head behind the sign, and nobody would know. You know,
and
a lot of deception.
Incidentally, there's a sign for Evan Solomon. Evan Solomon is a Liberal candidate who you probably a lot of listeners and watchers would know Evan Solomon from like Canadian political media circles. He lost his job at CBC because he was using his connections, his network connections, to deal art. And one of those people who Evan Solomon referred to as the Gov was actually this guy right here, Mark Carney. And it's one of those scandals that caused the CBC actually got Evan Solomon fired from his gig at CBC because he was doing all this underhanded art dealing. And then
it only goes so far, and the CBC can only cover so much, you know.
That's right. And they fired him. So he kicked around. Solomon pretended to be a right winger for a while, and he was here on the radio at CFRA, and he was pretending to be somewhat of a conservative. And so
seems to be a lot of scumbags in the Liberal Party.
Oh yeah. And Evan Solomon is another scumbag. I've never liked him, never trusted him. And recently, Evan Solomon shot himself in the foot because he, without thinking, he reflexively shared a meme that someone put out there of Mark Carney standing in front of the retard bus. That was funny. Like Evan Solomon tweeted that. That was
him.
really
oh
funny.
My god.
Yeah. So And there's another incident where Evan Solomon took a photo with two supporters in front of like this filthy wall somewhere downtown or something, and people were like, "What the hell are you doing?" So yeah.
Yeah, didn't we show that a few weeks ago?
I think we were. Yeah, we talked about it at one point because you remember like you redid the meme and you turned the retard bus into the retard short bus, and we had the other stuff that Solomon had put out.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
remember.
yeah.
I also actually I think I actually
But
have that
he's a
handy.
dodgy character too.
I think I actually have the original somewhere. Hang on, give me a sec here. I don't know, like spare projects. Oh, here it is. I see it. So I believe this is the original photo.
Yeah, that's it.
And
Yeah.
he retweeted this on Twitter.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Wow.
Evan Solomon shared that without really thinking. And that was a kind of a good coup for whoever made the meme, because it did its job.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome.
I got Grok actually. It was like kind of playing around with Grok's abilities and stuff. So I managed to get him to do that.
Yeah.
Even the misspelling was fine with me, and the bus was pretty much probably what it should have been there in the first place. But when I initially did it, Grok kind of like messed up his face a bit. I had to do some photoshopping of his head on that.
Yeah.
Grok's not perfect. Or no, sorry, not Grok. It was it Grok? No, it was ChatGPT, because all of a sudden, it has actually a pretty good. It now has a pretty good image generator. So, anyways, let's get back to the show. So the next thing, just another short Carney thing before we get into the good stuff. There was this. Was it this one? Sorry, I got lost here.
No, sorry.
Here we are. Okay, so so we're now in Victoria. And I think this is. Oh, no, I'm not this. Sorry, wrong one. Hang on, let me just remove a few things here from the studio. And let's get up the real, because this is the actual full footage. I actually had a cleaned up one here. Victoria. Isn't it this one? Drummond Hill. That's weird. Oh, it put me in the wrong directory again for some odd reason. Here it is. Sorry.
No.
Loss. Here. This is
so.
There we go.
Our response to these series of tariffs, and if you saw the headlines over the weekend, more coming on our softwood lumber, 50,000 people employed, 50,000 people in this province, 2% of our GDP, one of our biggest exports, livelihoods being attacked again by the Americans. Our response, shameful, agree, shameful. Our response is to fight and protect and to build. We are going to fight. And we are fighting. We are fighting the Americans. We are fighting the Americans everywhere they understand.
He's so awkward, man.
We're fighting the Americans in the pocketbook. We have retaliatory tariffs on them. We just hit them again in the auto sector. We're fighting them on Fox News, which is what they understand. We're sending Doug Ford onto Fox News to show them that we're not messing around up here. And we're going to send Danielle next. Maybe we won't send her. We'll send Danielle. No.
So that was a dig at Danielle Smith, and she's actually the only premier who's been really productive over still maintaining some relationship with the Americans. Where, to that point, she had reduced the tariffs on her province to 10%, I believe.
Yeah.
Versus 25%. So she's been somewhat effective. she's done something, and she's actually now even threatening to, like, if Carney's basically voted, she's going to move on to the next stage where they're going to look at separating Alberta from Canada.
And that's a
Carney
real
does
thing.
come into power.
Like, that is a real issue. Just a second.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, that, like, Western separation is a big issue. It is
yeah,
a
it would
thing.
be. It's where basically the money that coming into this country comes from at this point. A large bulk of the money that this country, raw money that comes in, not like us buying from each other, not us selling like our stuff. This is a bulk of what we sell to the United States comes from Alberta.
Heavy
So
crude
if they leave
oil.
Canada, that's it. We've got no money coming into this, whatever's left of this country.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to be this horseshoe country.
Yeah, and it's just incredible that the Carney Trudeau Liberals have done everything in their power to curtail Alberta's ability to get their oil out of the ground, as put every roadblock possible. And and we've talked about this many times on our show, and despite the fact that it's the economic engine of our country. The other thing that I was going to mention is that Carney and the Liberals, they tend towards divisive politics. They love divisive politics. They love to launch these wedges into our polity, and they pit Eastern Canada versus the West, and they're good at dividing young against old, and new immigrants against Canadian citizens, and like they're really keen on this divide and conquer strategy, and that's what Mark Carney is doing. Someone said recently that Carney is really keen on using these crises. He's the crisis candidate. He loves, even in his corporate history, his corporate past, he loves conjuring up these straw men, boogeymen to rail against, whether it's environmental apocalypticism or Donald Trump or Daniel Smith or Doug Ford. That's the tactic he uses, and that's what the Liberals use too.
Well, even like early in the campaign when he had there was that whole deal where he had basically told West Canada something, and then in French to East Canada, to Quebec specifically, he said he wasn't going to do pipelines.
Yeah, exactly.
And then to West Canada, he was going to do pipelines.
We're going to do pipelines, exactly.
Like, so what's the deal here? Is like, what, you can't even keep track of what you said, like literally a day before, or you literally are a two-faced liar.
Yeah, he's a two-faced liar, and he can't get away with that. He thought he could, but that's his,
and he's still doing it.
He is, and
he's constantly getting to these things where whenever he schleps off into that brief moment in French, he'll say something completely different than what he said in English.
And the Liberals, have been doing that for the last 10 years at least, like really dividing the country into these different segments to be, attacked and controlled, or attacked for whatever their interests are. And it's really getting very, very tiresome.
No, I agree. I mean, like, you got to ask yourself, I mean, like, of course, there's that ulterior motive. You're thinking, like, is their ultimate goal to really destroy Canada itself? Because that's a really good way to do it.
Yeah, because that's what it's looking like, right? And like,
or is it a tactic to keep people in confusion that they don't point fingers at the Liberals and all their shenanigans and stuff? That's, of course, another thing that they do with that.
Yeah, that is. I mean, that's always a consideration, right? Like, it's like if we use this nefarious tool, whether it's like, when we were talking about earlier in our show and in previous shows about this catch-release criminal policy where you have the criminal element running amok. I mean, part of that is to, like, people scared in their homes, and people start worrying about what's going on out there in the street rather than worrying about, like, who's governing the country, right? There's more immediate concerns, and that is a deflection tactic, right? And like, you wonder if they're trying to destroy Canada, if the Liberals have tried to destroy Canada, well, they're doing a good job of it.
That's true.
And you start to wonder if it's part of the plan. And yeah, like Western separation is a big deal, and it's a real possibility at this point if Carney wins.
Well, even then, like I said, there's always people around me who still will vote for this guy. And
Yeah.
my belief is that they haven't sat down and actually listened to this guy.
Yeah. The antidote would be just to watch 10 minutes of Mark Carney or 5 minutes, and they might change
I
their
really
tune.
want to challenge the people who are going to vote for him to listen to from start to finish one of his rallies, because I can't do it
I know.
myself.
It's impossible.
I need to watch Nux do it, and
Yeah.
watch him like basically entertain me while I struggle to listen to somebody like Mark Carney and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Next part of the segment, we were going to go into a little bit about questions and answers, because that has come up a bit. So we'll just do a little bit of that before we get into the final segment. So this is basically a question and answer period. He just did a speech in, where is this? Is this Oakville? Yeah, it was Oakville, because this is Anita Anand. Is that her name? Something like that.
Yep.
This is her writing. She did a bit of an introduction of Carney. Carney comes on and did basically the same speech, which anybody would struggle through. Like, once again, my challenge is out there. If you can actually sit and listen to this man talk for 10 minutes,
be our guest.
then you have the right to completely. Then whatever, you can say whatever you want about him. That's my challenge to the viewers of the show.
The Carney challenge.
The Carney challenge. Anyways, let's see how he responds to questions. Because actually, the first one is Judy Trin, who actually, I'll give her some credit here. She's been like really, really consistent in laying it in on Mark Carney, like asking him really tough questions and stuff.
Yeah, because I think it was Judy Trin last week who asked the question to Carney about Paul Chang, or
yep, that was her.
Chinese interference, and that was her, to her credit. Yeah,
and actually a lot of the podcasters have been noticing that CBC is not really giving him these as what they used to call it,
like softball questions.
Yeah, softball questions, like the way the media would ask questions of Biden, if you're into American politics.
Do you Joe, do you know where your kitchen table is? Yes. No.
Good for you.
Good for you, Joe. Oh my gosh.
You did it, Joe.
You you followed the fluorescent tape on the floor to get to the conference, Joe. Good for you.
You didn't follow. Anyways, let's listen to at least one or two questions. No. Go. Fine.
I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Let's bring it up a bit. Sorry.
First question, Judy. Good morning, Mr. Carney. Judy Trin with CTV News. Reuters is reporting that GM has decided to hire hundreds of workers at its Indiana plant to ramp up production, and there are concerns here that this is in preparation for moving GM's operation in Oshawa, where it makes the Silverado truck, to the US, something that could happen in weeks. What are you doing now to stop GM from moving to the US, to deter any plans that may be in the works?
Good question.
The first thing we're doing, Judy, is we're doing several things. And our core of our strategy is to fight, protect, and to build. In terms of fighting, we have put in place, I announced 2 days ago, counter tariffs on the U.S. autos into Canada. So, for example, if a Silverado truck is made in the United States, it is going to face a 25% tariff on that truck coming into Canada, and it's going to be based on the content, the non-Canadian content, non-Mexican content of that truck. On average, U.S. vehicles as a whole have lower, it will be in a higher effective tariff in effect. I'll cut to the chase on that. So that's the first thing, we put that in place. We've done that in a way that's smart, though, because we've carved out auto parts, so our auto industry remains competitive in that. So there's a clear strategy directly to the U.S. Secondly, we are providing
we're making available, is a better way to put it, enormous financing.
He constantly reminds me of that Brent character in The Office. It's really hard, like if anybody has never watched The Office, the Ricky Gervais version, the UK version, please watch it because you'll know what I'm talking about if you've ever watched it. This man talks like that scumbag. who's basically the main character of the show. This very defunct middle manager that's essentially what Carney is to me, But anyways,
for Canadian enterprises.
I'm sorry, you were going to say something?
Oh, he did nothing to address the issue. Like, what have you done to stop that move from taking place? And he said, well, if a civil router truck is made in the United States, we're going to tariff it. Oh, okay. So that means they made it in the United States and you're assuming the plant is going to leave. Like, he hasn't addressed the substance of the reporter's question. Like, he hasn't offered up anything tangible to suggest how he could keep the plant in Oshawa.
Yeah, and actually,
he didn't offer up anything.
The end of the. I don't think this is the end of the question.
Would be GM or others in Canada, both through the ability to defer their taxes, to take direct financing in enormous amounts, tens of billions of dollars that is being provided on a low interest basis if needed, as well as support directly to workers. Third thing we're doing in terms of our strategy is around building, which is we've put in place a new strategic response fund, which more directly will supply support for building made in Canada. But if I can just bring that together, so your question was what are we doing, but to be absolutely clear about the situation is the U.S. has put in place punitive tariffs on an industry which is fully integrated. There will be disruption in that industry. It will rebound negatively on the United States. Let's be absolute.
So nothing about saving this plant, you're right.
Nope. It's almost like the way he responded to it, his response is like, it's almost like he assumes that the plant will leave. That's how he answered the question. And it's, he didn't offer up any ideas as to how to keep the plant. Because once those jobs are gone,
I know.
you can't get them back.
I know.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible response.
I don't know if we saw it. We showed it last week, but in reference to like this, attack on the Canadian automotive industry, I think one of Pierre's solutions was to not tax Canadian-made vehicles. Like compare that to his solution.
That's right. And the other thing that that Mark Carney hasn't talked about, like he didn't even say, well, as soon as I become prime minister, I'm going to go down to Washington and we're going to hammer out what needs to be fixed with the USMCA or CUSMA or NAFTA or whatever they're calling it this week. And we're going to nail down some of these things where we can work with Trump and work with the Americans and really come to an agreement as to how we can make North America stronger and have a deal that's of mutual benefit for both Canada and the United States. He hasn't said any of that.
Well, obviously, because his whole thing is built on, assaulting the Americans.
Yeah, and that's really telling, and that's why that's the wrong response. He should be like Pierre has talked about. We want to negotiate from a position of strength, and like Harper in his speech said, no, we're going to like negotiate with the Americans, and Carney's not even saying that he was even going to negotiate with Trump, and that's what needs to happen. And a lot of people have been saying like, no, we have to.
But like you said earlier, his whole deal is about using Trump to terrorize Canadians into voting for him. So he can't be talking to Trump because that's not what he wants to appear to be doing to the Canadians.
Crisis. This is like Carney. Like I was reading something earlier, I can't remember when it was, but he was talking about his time at the Bank of England, and we were talking about this too when he was at the Bank of England, when he was in the UK. He was, leveraging his positions to get these different airlines to get like greenwashed fuel and stuff at a premium, and that's where they were leveraging like this like this environmental apocalypticism to try to get people to buy things at a premium, to play up, and he's playing up the crisis of America and the crisis of the lesser boogeyman of Daniel Smith.
And all this so that his company, who invested in this green fuel, basically profited from that.
Exactly.
So
and the other thing, and that's a trend too, right? Where he's leveraging his political position to benefit the companies he's affiliated with. Another thing that I read recently was like Brookfield they bought some sort of like modular home company for like $4 billion or whatever. And sure enough, I wonder why exactly. And sure enough, like one of the things the Liberals are going to do is like push that modular home building. It's just a complete conflict of interest in his policy making, and he's
there's definitely no conflict in his interest. No, I just want to constantly point out he doesn't have Canadians, benefit at heart. I mean, he doesn't. You can almost literally say he doesn't care about Canadians.
He doesn't care about the country. Like he's willing to risk Western separation and Western alienation to use Daniel Smith as a boogeyman. He's risked same with Trudeau, risked our relationship with the United States by playing up anti-Americanism, reckless stuff, crisis stuff. And like he's running a terrible negative campaign that's bad for the country, even before the election takes place.
All right. So since we're running out of time, let's just do a quick comparison to at least one question from Pierre Polyev. Another question and answer period. I believe this is in Edmonton after the rally. After the rally, he did the huge rally he did in Edmonton. So let's play it.
Thank you.
We will now take questions from the floor.
Good morning, Sapreet from My Radio 580. You briefly mentioned scrapping Bill C-69, and your announcement this morning further elaborated on that. You've promised to scrap C-69 and fast-track energy projects. How do you balance out the Indigenous land rights and environmental review processes, especially in light of the recent court rulings on Indigenous consultation?
Yes, you're a very good question. After the lost Liberal decade, Indigenous rights have been trampled by this Liberal government. Liberals blocked the Northern Gateway pipeline with Mark Carney's vocal, on-the-record opposition to that pipeline, even though 80% of First Nations people along the path supported the pipeline. They killed the Tech Frontier mine, even though all 20 First Nations communities around the mine were 100% in favor of it. And the Liberals are keeping our First Nations people in poverty by blocking the resource projects that their communities support. And we interpret Section 35 of the Constitution to go both ways, that we have to consult First Nations who are opposed to projects, but we have an obligation to consult also those that are in favor of them. The Liberals did not consult one First Nations community when they killed the Northern Gateway pipeline. And the result is that the 500,000 barrels of oil that we could have been sending to Asia at world prices every day are now going to the Americans at enormous price discounts. And make no mistake, it's the same Liberal MPs, same Liberal ministers, same Liberal strategists with the same Liberal policy. And
okay. Just want to put it out there to all those people who are putting up these pictures saying, not this guy. What's wrong with that answer? I really don't get why you would not vote for this man. He honestly has this country to his heart, and our benefits to his heart. And
and just for a bit of context, like the bill C-69 is like we talk about it like colloquially, it's become known as like the anti-pipeline bill or piece of legislation, and
it doesn't ban them, but it makes it very difficult to build one.
Yeah, it makes almost like the environmental assessment process so prohibitive that it takes decades sometimes. Like sometimes it's like a decade and a half, 2 decades to get these projects approved. And that's something that was enacted during the Trudeau tenure, and something that really needs to be repealed in order to get our resource sector going. And it's one of those situations where like a lot of First Nations groups, like in Canada, these research projects so often go across native land holdings, and you have to get the approval of native bands or Aboriginal bands to get these projects to go ahead. That's the reality of our system. And the thing is, like, a lot of these bands do want these projects to go ahead, and they want these projects to go forward because there's be a lot of benefits in terms of jobs.
Yeah, but once again, the Liberals are
revenue and
okay
stuff.
when it goes against something they want to shut down.
Yeah.
But they no consultation whatsoever when they want to shut down a project they really want.
That's right.
So what the hell,
Yeah. And I think like when Pierre gets in there, like I hope like he'll be able to, if he gets Bill C-69 repealed and gets things ramped up and stuff like that. I mean, I think sometimes there's that the Aboriginal bands like have a disproportionate say in terms of these resource projects, but that's sort of like that's sort of the system we're living under, and that these Aboriginal bands are key to the approval or disapproval of these projects. Like, and when it was during the Trudeau's tenure, when it was in the interests of the Trudeau government to back some of these anti-pipeline protests, who are both not native and non-native, they did it. And they turned a blind eye, or they ignored native groups that wanted these pipeline projects to go forward. So yeah, it's I just wish we could sort out all this mess and get
Well,
some
and
of these
on top of
projects
that, I
approved.
want to bring it out there too on the fact that Mark Carney might have a problem of building pipelines in Canada, but he had no problem, his company Brookfield from basically supporting this recent project in the United States and the United Emirates.
Yeah.
He supported and bought some pipelines.
Yeah, like I mean and Brookfield is involved in all sorts of resource projects, pipeline projects, extractive projects, coal projects, all
Hey, he's got
over
no
the
problem
place.
supporting those.
No, he
But of
doesn't.
course he'll say it's because Pierre doesn't know how the world works. Well,
right.
If I, let's take the simplistic look at it. But okay, so you're going to support all these projects that are now delivering and making money for your companies in the United States. So if you were to support these pipelines from being built, we probably would, be less dependent on the United States, because we'd be able to sell like our oil to not in the United States at a discount, but everywhere else like Europe, Asia,
Yeah,
and
like
they desperately, yeah. And if you guys are actually against stuff like, the Russians, for example, well, one of the reasons why you want to sell stuff like natural gas to Europe is because right now they're depending on the Russians to
Yeah.
supply them with fuel.
And
that's what's actually
yeah.
funding their war against the Ukrainians.
Yeah, that's right. And they have been through it. The war, like Russia has still been supplying all sorts of natural gas to Europe. And yeah, like whenever it's in Mark Carney's interest, whether it's politically or fiscally or as far as his holdings are concerned, that he works in his interests. And the difference with Pierre Poilievre is that he wants to gear the Canadian government towards interests that help the country. Isn't that a novel idea? Having a government power of our own country that has the interests of its citizens and its economy and its interests at heart. And that's one of the key differences between the Pierre platform and the Mark Carney globalist platform.
Yeah, but that would of course put us, in favor of the evil populist causes and stuff. That's such a dirty, evil word that the left has made populism into.
Yeah, well, and the left has done that to just vilify their enemies, which they've been doing for years. And I think the good thing is that a lot of people are starting to see through that vilification. And if you look at the rallies and you look at Pierre himself and his campaign, you realize he's not evil, right? Like, that's one of the good things about these caricatures that the left, they create that straw man caricature of whether it's Trump or Pierre Poilievre or Stephen Harper or whoever, that it's easy to dispel it when you just take a look at some of the things he does and says and his interactions with really, he's not evil.
No, like I saw the other day on Facebook, somebody I know had basically posted this picture where you have like a split in the road, and there's like a sign on one side, and one side is the liberal path, and the other side is the conservative path or the peaceful path. The conservative,
right?
yeah, and then of course on the side of the conservatives, they're all about blaming and being negative and all this stuff, and then this side, of course, the liberals were all about caring and giving people a chance.
Yeah,
it's like,
and it's
okay,
false.
fine. You know what? Yeah, you can
False.
give people a chance, but up until a certain point, you're going to have to start, holding people to account. Otherwise, we get what we're in today. We're powerless against the Americans,
and
we have,
and it's a false argument. Like, it's a false meme, because the negative campaign, like all the blame and the vilification and the name calling, has been coming from the liberal camp. Like Pierre Poilievre, he's done that. He's blamed the liberals for what they've done, but he's also running quite a positive campaign. It's been fun. It looks like when the pleb and these other guys, and we were getting that raw video from CPAC and stuff, like these are positive rockin' events where people look like they're having fun. These people have been flocking to these events from all over the place, and it's not exactly been the best weather, and they're being held in these warehouse venues where people have to park their car and walk into them, and it's kind of like a concert type atmosphere. It's actually a lot of positivity.
Let's get into that. I don't know if we'll have enough time to go through our montage of the pleb, but let's play a bit of what the pleb actually. So nobody knows who the pleb is.
Okay,
this is the pleb. He's a YouTuber who very conservative leaning, is all for Pierre Poilievre, and recently one of his viewers have basically donated enough money for him to basically follow the Pierre Poilievre rallies for the past week, and he's done 4 or 5 of them to date, each of them filling stadiums, and we'll play a bit right now. So
we're here. 4 viewers. Where is everybody? People are not off work yet. How's it going? We're currently at the back of the line here. Just got ourselves set up. That was awesome. Hello, everyone. Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Let's skip that.
Boomers for Pierre, boomers for Pleb. Let's go. All right. How's it going?
Look at all the people
hi.
lining up.
How are
this
you
is
guys?
Hours before the actual
Bump
rally.
For a big rally tonight? Yeah? Bump for a big rally?
And I'm going to remind people, this is in Kingston. Very liberal Kingston.
And it's not exactly tropical, is it? You can hear the wind howling. People are bundled up and stuff. The weather's kind of cold, but people are out there in droves, right? And
let's keep going.
It's great.
Well, this one is.
Did you guys see the sizes? I'm in Oshawa right now.
Look how cold it is.
Look how crazy this lineup is. The lineup is already building 2 hours.
So let's keep going. And it goes to the crowd.
Yeah? Oh, yeah. Are you excited? You think we're going to win this election? Yeah? Do you believe the poll?
Hey, see how windy it is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So now this is in Penticton.
How's it going? Watch you all the time. Thank you. How's it going? Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. You guys excited for the rally tonight?
Yeah. You can see the mountains in the background.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Hi. Thanks for supporting me.
Look at the people lining up for
Good,
this
man.
event.
I'm excited. I'm excited. My first time in British Columbia.
Once again, like everyone who's like following the polls, that are basically putting Mark Carney ahead. You've seen three of the rallies that Mark Carney was holding. Compare them to at least the lineups. What you see in the lineups of each of the rallies in the past few nights, he's done 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
At this point, each and every one of them pretty much like this, in a big warehouse with a lot of people lining up hours before the actual event, filling up these, and actually breaking a record. And we'll get to that.
Yeah, and I think that the polls as they stand now, a lot of the polls are I don't think they're accurate at all. I know there's this kind of pretty popular personality on Twitter /X called Gunther Eagleman. He's like a MAGA guy. He's in the States.
Okay.
And he cited Polymarket. Polymarket is like this, I guess they gave
it's a betting site.
Yeah, betting and stuff like that. And they had like some betting graph for the Canadian election. They had Carney way up in terms of popularity and Pierre way down, and it was like, no, that's not true. And people were speculating to what extent, are people manipulating these polls? Like,
well, I mean, it could be that they're basing their graphs on the polls, and if you're basing it on the polls, obviously there's a lot we can talk about the polls, and we haven't really talked about them. But I think we mentioned a few shows ago how a lot of the people who respond to these polls are boomers who stay at home.
Yeah,
and conservatives are out working.
That's right. And the other thing that just came out, the results of it was Juno News did their neighbor poll, and they've been doing their own internal polling. And I think I mentioned this last week that the neighbor poll is an interesting question that's usually geared at trying to gauge the true right of center leanings of an electorate sample. And
well, it's the equivalent of asking for a friend, right?
Yeah, exactly. The asking for a friend neighbor poll, as far as Juno News and the guys that are doing their polling, put Pierre ahead at something like 45% approval rating versus the Liberals. So if the neighbor polls are put into play, you get that flip where you have Pierre's on top. And I think that's more accurate because from what we're seeing with this popular support on the road all across Canada, it's been overwhelming for Pierre.
Pretty
right?
impressive. Actually, the next bit I'm going to play is we'll pretty much give everybody who has been following these rallies like we have an idea of like the people who are actually really attending and showing up for these rallies and stuff. So let's put this will put this things into perspective.
Kingston was the home of our first Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald.
So this is Kingston. We're starting here.
Awesome. And can I say that tonight we're going to add a new chapter
Look at the people in the room.
History of Kingston with one of the largest political rallies we've seen in this city in decades.
Yeah,
this is a very liberal city.
Yeah,
this is a very liberal city.
All right, now we're going to kick things off with something really important. I'm going to ask if you're not already standing, if you can stand to your feet. And I'm going to ask you to take out your phone or put your flashlight on. Just imagine we're at a concert. We are going to sing our national anthem. We're going to show our pride in Canada. Are you ready? Okay, we've got a few people that are up here on stage. Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Look at that. Now this is just in Kingston.
Yeah, and Kingston is not a very big city.
It's a very liberal city on top of that. Historically, it's a very liberal city.
Yeah.
This is Oshawa.
Oshawa?
Mm-hmm. Look at the people there.
Another great turnout. Great turnout.
This is what true patriotism looks like.
It was very positive.
Not as impressive as the other two, but this is the third city of 5.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten even to the biggest one yet. So yeah, I mean that's what true patriotism like, and people are showing up. People who actually really care. This is pretty much. I'm hoping this is what the polls are missing.
I think they are. I really do.
So right now, if you were to just base everything on the polls, you would have a very negative outlook on who's going to win.
Yeah, like you just think of in the United States when Trump was running his campaigns, where the polls are being what polls are really inaccurate, and he was getting these huge rallies, and especially in the lead up to 2014, he was getting these big rallies, and people were lined up out the door, and they can fit everybody in.
They were filling stadiums.
Stadiums, just to hear him speak, and albeit on a Canadian scale, Pierre is getting massive crowds. And we're going to go into the Edmonton rally, which is probably the biggest
Let's do that next.
political rally in the history of our country.
So let's start off with this one. I thought it was the cute one to start with.
Oh yeah.
This is the Edmonton rally.
Look over there. There's other lines over there. It's unbelievable.
This is Pierre coming in on his tour bus, looking at the lines lining up for the Edmonton rally.
Il y a tous les amis à papa cousin. Tous les amis qui viennent voir papa.
You can hear Anna say there, these are all of Papa's friends, les amis de Papa, she said in French, because the little kids were there. And it's really awesome, right? Like all the people lined up here and walking towards the venue.
Yeah. And let's keep going. So anyways, probably last few items in the show on this very last segment. Typically when Pierre goes to these rallies, he has his wife Anita basically tell their story and explain who Pierre is if nobody knows who Pierre is. Your typical story that Pierre is, of course, was adopted by 2 school teachers, fought for everything he had, was, didn't grow up rich. Well, middle class, I think, is what I got the sense of. Yeah. Of course, she would tell her own story where, she was a daughter of a medium-sized family of immigrants from Venezuela. They lived in Montreal. She grew up in Montreal, and that she, at the age of 18, eventually became financially independent. She was able to afford her own home, and this was just before she likes to dig this in, just before the Liberals came into power for the next 10, 12 years. She wants to point it out that it used to be possible to have what they call the Canadian promise.
Yeah.
And
she's been very effective in her introductions and being very involved in the campaign. They did something a little bit different in Edmonton, and that was
yes, they did.
Having
this video.
The man himself, Stephen Harper, introduced Pierre.
His boss. Former Prime Minister of Canada. When Pierre started working for or being part of the Liberal Party. The Conservative Party. Yeah, sorry about that.
No, sorry.
So anyways, I thought this was a really good, what do you say? I always forget words for this.
Oh, it was a really good speech. It was really good campaign or introductory speech by Harper here. And he addressed some things that needed to be addressed, and he did it quite well. It was,
Oh, that's it. That's the word. Endorses. A very good endorsement of his former employee.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm going to play this whole speech because I keep talking about this, how I've never had a really good impression of Stephen Harper. And after watching this speech, I actually started questioning my view of him. So let's play it.
Friends, I am in a unique position in this federal election. I am the only person who can say that both of the men running to be Prime Minister once worked for me. And in that regard, my choice, without hesitation, without equivocation, without a shadow of a doubt, is Pierre Poilievre.
Look at the people in this. This is 15,000 people, I believe.
I have known Pierre Poilievre for a quarter of a century. Since he was a very young man, the first time I met him, I could see that he was smart, articulate, possessing tremendous passion for our country and strong convictions about sound public policy. In 2004, during the time of my leadership, Pierre's parliamentary career began. He went progressively from a backbench MP to a parliamentary secretary, to a junior cabinet minister, to a senior cabinet minister, and of course, to party leader. And in all of those roles, he worked, he fought, and he learned. Because it is not just that Pierre excelled in all of those roles. In all of them, he grew. He got better and better. Friends, don't let anyone tell you that he was born to be Prime Minister, or that he can just somehow parachute into the job fully prepared. Political experience, elected, accountable political experience, and the capacity for growth with that political experience, that is what Pierre has demonstrated for 2 decades, and that is the single most important characteristic a Prime Minister needs. And by the way, I say that as the guy who actually did lead Canada through the global financial crisis. I hear there's someone else claiming it was him.
Wonder who.
It was, of course, our government, the late, great Jim Flaherty, and our Conservative team who were responsible for the day-to-day macroeconomic management during that challenging time. And friends, it's no secret that our country faces today another historically challenging time in the form of the Trump administration. There is no sugarcoating that. But the bulk of the problems that afflict our country, falling living standards, declining employment and housing opportunities, rising crime, the growing divisions between our regions and our people, these were not created by Donald Trump. They were created by the policies of 3 Liberal terms, policies that the present Prime Minister supported and wants a 4th Liberal term to continue. Pierre has consistently opposed those policies. Policies that have put costs up, accelerated crime, left our wealth in the ground, and made our economy vulnerable and under America's thumb.
Yeah.
And Pierre has, just as importantly, long advocated the positive alternatives for change, to axe those taxes, build homes, bring back jobs,
get our resources to the whole world. And stand up to Washington from a position of strength. Friends, I believe that the challenge this country faces today from the United States, as real and serious as it is, should not be another excuse for liberal failure.
Exactly.
Instead, it should be a historic opportunity. That's how we've got to see it. An opportunity to make Canada what it should be. Internally united, internationally connected, a truly independent economy with the highest living standards in the world. And with those benefits enjoyed not just by protected elites, but by all the people of this country in every region of this country.
Yes.
And do bring it home, friends, because that goal does not depend on Donald Trump. It depends on us. But we will only get there with leadership from a person who has an actual policy plan, from a person who has been right on all the big issues for a decade, and a person who has the energy and, yes, the youth to take us forward into a better, stronger, and more united future. That person has been my colleague. He is my friend, he is our leader, and he is the next Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Poilievre and Anna.
Great speech, great speech.
Yeah. Yeah, once again, like I said, this and that other clip you showed me about him like many years ago when he's like practicing for one of his speeches and stuff.
Yeah.
Really changed my mind on what I thought of Stephen Harper back then. I even remember even telling my parents, like, you know, like he's such a cold whatever. And this is all, in hindsight, I know it's probably the media. All the clips that I've seen of the media of him that, you know, put him in this kind of negative light that, you know, he's this cruel, calculating, industrial, all about the oil, all about the West, and care about the rest of Canada. And that was, there's no way that this man could have been that.
Yeah, it was a real vilification of him when he was in there, at a time when the legacy media had more power than it does today. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and he is like he does have charisma. It's a different type of charisma compared to what Pierre generates, but it's a charismatic sort of like father figure. He comes across as someone who you know, really knows his stuff. And I really like some of the things that he said in that speech, including the part where he says Canada should have one of the highest living standards, if not the highest living standard in the world, that can be enjoyed by everyone. And he said, and Harper said right here, not just enjoyed by a minuscule elite. And that's what these guys like Carney and Trudeau and the globalist, they want a really high living standard for this less than 1%. And they seem to want all the rest of us to live in poverty. And Harper's saying no. And he's acknowledging that very fact, that we should be in a position in Canada where we have a really high living standard for everybody. And when he was in there, in 2015, when he finally lost to Trudeau in 2015, when you look at some of the metrics as far as Canada's living standards are concerned, it's always neck and neck, GDP per capita or however they are measuring it, that we were doing really well economically. We had some deficits, of course, because of like the economic crisis that he and Jim Flaherty went through, but
it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, like we were in really good economic shape, and we were on par with the Americans. And as soon as Trudeau got in there, and you could see everything take a nosedive thereafter. And
well, even that graph you showed like many weeks ago, but like in the last 10 years, like how that showed like how far we've come in our development. Like we're like this little sliver on the graph. Like basically, we barely moved.
Yeah,
in the
like
last 10 years.
Exactly.
And all these other countries, even India.
Like, economic
we
growth.
used to make fun of like places like India being third world, and they were like leagues ahead of us.
That's right, and that was as a result of Trudeau and the Liberal government's policy. Our economic growth was just stunted, where everybody else took off, and that's almost like, wow, if they set out to really cripple our economy, the Liberals sure did a great job. And this is a really great endorsement, this speech. Harper like highlighted Pierre's experience, his like hard-won political experience throughout Harper's tenure, right? Like going from backbencher to
and probably one of the things I really like about this speech is how he told people like it's up to us.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the Americans. It's not anybody else on this planet. It's not even the prime minister. It's us, and we need leadership to empower us to make our lives better.
We need
and not get in our effing way.
Exactly. Basically. Yeah, and we need that. We need someone like Pierre to get in there right now and try. I think he can do it. I think he can still do it. He needs to win and get in there, get our economy rolling again. And
I'm hoping.
I'm
hoping what we see here is the real polls.
I hope too, and I think I have a positive view on that. I really think Pierre's support is a lot more than what the mainstream pollers are letting it on to be. I think he has a lot more support. I think he's gonna win. I really hope so. I really hope so.
That's all we have time for this week. We've come to the end of our clips. I have a couple more. The one we talked about earlier about some comments that Yves Blanchet, I believe, had on Mark Carney. But seeing that the debates are next week, I think we'll save it till then.
Sure.
We'll have a lot more to talk about next week in regards to the big floor show that we're going to get.
Yeah.
And anything spawning off of that. So I'm going to save those clips for next week because I think there'll be more in context.
Excellent.
But other than that, did anything else you want to add before we close off the show?
Oh no, that was a great show. I think Pierre's on a real roll here. The turnouts for his rallies have been really great. I think they're running a really, really good campaign. It's resonating with thousands of people, and I hope he can keep the energy going. I think he can. I think I don't know. I'm hopeful.
I'd be a lot more hopeful if the people who somehow watch the show or see any other clips we recommend just out of curiosity and view all kinds of stuff like the rallies that Pierre does and his messages, and maybe take my 10-minute Mark Carney challenge of seeing if you can actually stand
to
listen to the man for 10 minutes, because I sure can't. It's really hard.
It's like the ice bucket challenge.
Yeah. If anybody's like really, stong about Canada stong about voting for the Liberals and Mark Carney, then take the challenge of watching like a whole rally or just even 10 minutes of the man
try
talk.
to do it. If you can stand it,
without pausing the video and just really listening, not just sitting there, like doing like crossword puzzles and stuff. Like really listen to what he's saying and understand what he's saying. I mean, it's just 10 minutes of your time,
Yeah.
And take our challenge.
Yeah. I don't think it's possible to do it. I don't think it could be
not
done.
not without getting the heebie-jeebies and maybe second guessing what you've been
Yeah.
thinking all these time. Because every time I listen to the man, it's sort of like so many things just run through my head. Like is he lying? Is he being disingenuous? Does he really not have our interests at heart? I mean, is he just really dumb about what he's saying and just
Yeah.
not really self-aware? Possible, I don't know.
Do I have
But
to?
if that's not even the possibility, what
and
is?
Yeah, like, do I have to fumigate the whole office after listening?
Well, anyways, please take our challenge. Just do yourself a favor and listen to the people and all that, and don't just go with the team. Make your own educated decision. Listen to the people. I mean, there's so much you can watch. You can go on YouTube. You can go on Rumble. And all these CPAC videos of all the raw footage of all these rallies are there. Mark Carney's and Pierre Poilievre's, and you can listen to them all and just make decisions for yourself. Don't rely on the CBC. Don't rely on CTV. I'm talking to you Canadians who know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. The legacy media is not our friend.
No, especially when somebody like Pierre has constantly threatened about cutting their funds. But that's another story for another day. Anyhow.
Cut away, good man. Cut away.
Let's go to our particulars and close off the show. So once again, if you want to watch the show on X, you're going to have to wait a bit because we're not live there today. And most likely we'll keep going with this live on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, and upload the video afterwards, after the show, to Twitter. So if you want to watch the show on Twitter, you can watch it a few hours after the live show. You can watch it at Hand of Infinity, where the blue check mark for the common nonsense set. If you want to ask me questions, you can do so over there too. If you want to talk to Mikerowaveable, his Twitter tag is right there at microwave, not able, just microwave.tcn or microwave.tcn.
Yeah.
On Twitter. If you want to once again watch the show afterwards on YouTube, you can basically go to our page on YouTube. There's a playlist at the top of the page. You'll see all the other things there. But, the show's at the top page. All the shows are there. If you want to watch them all, put them on a loop, go to your Pilates or cycling or whatever while watching the show, please do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to watch the show on Rumble, all our podcasts will be there if we get canned by YouTube. So if you want to watch every bit of content or media from this podcast, it will always be on Rumble. And we're always going live once again on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble.
Excellent.
So,
awesome.
Yeah. Nothing else from Mikerowaveable?
No, just thank you. Thank you so much, Weathers. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We will see you next week. And yeah, have fun and take care, everybody.
Yes. And cheers, everyone. And please follow us next week. The debates are next week, so definitely a lot of content, and maybe we might even do a live show on the debate. Not sure yet.
Be fun.
We'll think about it, but it might be something to do.
Yeah,
In any
we'll
case,
let you know. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Till next time.